What is that? All right, fire on the rails. I hate fire. Hate it. And again, obviously, she's got lots of good reason to hate fire. But the entire Oklahoma panhandle is so dry, everything's going up in flames. So this is actually similar to California. In California, there was a lot of fires this past summer because it gets so dry. If there's drought, fires start super easy. So in the panhandle, since there's been no rain, things just catch fire easily. Everything's ready to ignite. Last week, the school caught fire. Damage was light on account of it being caught early. Most kids joked about it the next day, but it terrified me. I could hardly go back into the building. This week, 3 boxcars in the train yard burned to ash. So remember, boxcars are the trains that carry stuff. That's what a boxcar is. Jim Goyne and Harry Kessler spotted the fire, and that was a miracle, considering the fierceness of the dust storm at the time. The fire boys tore over, but they couldn't put the blaze out without water. And water is exactly what we don't have. So they separated the burning cars, moved them down a siding, away from any little thing that might catch if the flames hopped. It was all they talked about at school. The dust blew, they say, so you'd think it would have smothered the fire out, but the flames, crazy in the wind, licked away at the wooden frames of the 3 boxcars, until nothing remained but warped metal, twisted rails, scorched dirt, and charred ties. No one talks about fire right to my face. They can't forget how fire changed my life, but I hear them talking anyway. All right. The mail train. They promised through rain, heat, snow, and gloom, but they never said anything about dust. And so the mail got stuck for hours, for days, on the Santa Fe, because mountains of dust had blown over the tracks, because blizzards of dust blocked the way. All that time, as the dust beat down on the cars, a letter was waiting inside a mailbag. A letter from Aunt Ellis, my father's sister, written just to me, inviting me to live with her in Lubbock. Lubbock is a city in Texas. I want to get out of here, but not to Aunt Ellis and not to Lubbock, Texas. My father didn't say much when I asked what I should do. Let's wait and see, he said. What's that supposed to mean? So what was Aunt Ellis wanting here? What was she trying to get?
To make Billy Joe live with her.
Exactly right, to get her out of there. Migrants. Remember, migrants are people who travel from one place to another. Okay, kind of like the word immigrant. Immigrant is somebody who travels to a new place. A migrant is somebody who just travels from place to place. We'll be back when the rain comes, they say, pulling away with all they own, straining the springs of their motor cars. Don't forget us. So they go, fleeing the blowing dust, fleeing the fields of brown-tipped wheat, barely ankle-high, and sparse as the hair on a dog's belly. We'll be back, they say, pulling away towards Texas, Arkansas, where they can rent a farm, pull in enough cash, maybe start again. We'll be back when it rains, they say, setting out with their bed springs and mattresses, their cook stoves and dishes, their kitchen tables, their milk goats, tied to their running boards in rickety cages, setting out for California, where even though they say they'll come back, they just might stay if what they hear about the place is true. Don't forget us, they say, but there are so many leaving. How can I remember them all? Right, so again, all the people who were living in this area, used to working on the farms and traveling, are all leaving because there's no wheat. Blankets of black. On the first clear day, we staggered out of our caves of dust into the sunlight, turning our faces to the big blue sky. So this is this. Obviously, one of the dust storms has ended. On the second clear day, we believed the worst was over at last. We flocked outside, trading in town, going to stores and coming out, only to find the air still clear and gentle, grateful for each easy breath, right? So you have 2 days in a row of these people not getting any dust storms. The third day clear, summer came in April, and the churches opened their arms to all comers, and all the comers came. After church, folks headed for picnics, car trips. No one could stay inside, right? So it's almost kind of like what we're dealing with, right? So if it was just like, oh, everyone's allowed out, this is what people would do, right? Everyone would be out. My father and I argued about the funeral of Grandma Lucas, who truly was no relation. But we end up going anyway, driving down the road in a procession to Texhoma. So the family's going to a funeral. 6 miles out of town, the air turned cold. Birds beat their wings everywhere you looked, whole flocks dropping out of the sky, crowding on fence posts. I was sulking in the truck beside my father when heaven's shadow crept across the plains, a black cloud, big and silent as Montana, boiling on the horizon and barreling toward us. More birds tumbled from the sky, frantically keeping ahead of the dust. Right, so this family had 3 days of nice weather, and now they're seeing like this crazy, giant dust storm in front of them. We watched as the storm swallowed the light. That's an example of personification. The sky turned from blue to black. Night descended in an instant, and the dust was on us. Is it really night?
No,
No, it's not,
it's
right?
not.
Yeah, it's just dark, right?
It's just the
Yeah,
dust.
exactly. The wind screamed, again, another example of personification. The blowing dirt ran so thick I couldn't see the brim of my hat as we plunged from the truck fleeing. The dust swarmed like it had never swarmed before. My father groped for my hand, pulled me away from the truck. We ran, a blind pitching towards the shelter of a small house. Almost invisible, our hands tight together, running towards the ghostly door, pounding on it with desperation. Right, so there's this little house that they're seeing, they just are running to it to get in. A woman opened her home to us, all of us, not just me and my father, but the entire funeral procession. So all these people were like going for a burial, and this happened. So they're all like running into this house. One after another, we tumbled inside, gasping our lungs burning for want of air. All the lamps were lit against the dark. The house, dazed by dust, gazed weakly out. Again, that's personification. The walls shook in the howling wind. We helped tack up sheets on the windows and doors to keep the dust down. Cars and trucks, unable to go on, their ignitions shorted out by the static electricity, opened up and let out more passengers who stumbled for shelter. One family came in, clutched together their pa, divining the path with a long wooden rod. If it hadn't been for the company, the storm would have broken us completely, broken us more thoroughly than the plow had broken the Oklahoma sod, more thoroughly than my burns had broken the ease of my hands. But for the sake of the crowd and the hospitality of the home that sheltered us, we held on and waited, sitting or standing, breathing through wet cloths as the fog of dust filled the room and settled slowly over us. When it let up a bit, some went on to bury Grandma Lucas. But my father and I, we cleaned the thick layer of grime off the truck, pulled out of the procession, and headed home, creeping slowly along the dust-mounded road. When we got back, we found the barn half covered in dunes, right? So now there's like crazy amounts of dust all over the place. I couldn't tell which rise of dust was Ma and Franklin's grave. So there's so much dust now that she can't even tell where the graves of the mom and the kid are. The front door hung open, blown in by the wind. Dust lay 2 feet deep in ripply waves across the parlor floor. Dust blanketed the cook stove, the ice box, the kitchen chairs, everything deep in dust, and the piano, buried in dust. While I started to shovel, my father went out to the barn. He came back, and when I asked, he said the animals weren't good. The tractor was dusted out. And I said, "It's a wonder the truck got us home." I should have held my tongue. When he tried starting the truck again, it wouldn't turn over. Right, so she's like regretting saying that because now the truck doesn't work either. The visit. Mad Dog came by to see how we made out after the duster. They didn't come to court me. They didn't think he had. Remember, courting is like trying to go out with. We visited for more than an hour. The sky had cleared enough to see Black Mesa. I showed him my father's pond. Mad Dog says he was going to Amarillo to sing on the radio, and if he sang good enough, they might have a job for him there. "You'd leave the farm?" I asked. He nodded. "You'd leave school?" He shrugged. Mad Dog scooped a handful of dust like a boy in a sand pit. He said, "I love this land no matter what." I looked at his hands. They were scarless. Mad Dog stayed longer than he planned. He ran down the road back to his father's farm, and he realized the time. Dust rose each place his foot fell, leaving him a trace of him long after he'd gone. Alright, yeah, we're gonna stop there. So, on Sakarativ. Let me just start it for you. Alright, make sure you are logging in. I will share this video with you in 2 seconds.